So when I first came to the Zen centers back in the 1980s, I think about 1985, 86, no, about 85, there was this guy. His name was Thomas Vanderbrack. And I always remember him because he was always poking at us people, poking at us Westerners, Western Buddhists. And he would keep saying things like, this Buddhism, he says, why bother with it? Why don't you go back to Jesus? And he would say things like, look, he says, why kid yourself? You really want Jesus, right? And he was always on this. And when I took the precepts and on the day of the precepts, he had to interview me. And he's just like, Mark, he says, look, he goes, this isn't for you. He goes, I know you want to go back to Jesus. Jesus is what you want. Why don't you just go back to Jesus? Because you're just going to drag Jesus right into Buddhism, and it's just going to create a big mess for you. And, I was stubborn, and I said, no, I could do this. And he laughed, and he said, okay. And over the years, I kind of found he was right, that the majority of Westerners, they felt that Jesus had let them down, or that Christianity let them down, or the church has let them down, that bad things happened to them. They didn't get things didn't work out for them. They felt their life had gone off into a weird direction, and that they were not loved by Jesus, that all of their sowing seeds in heaven didn't pay out, whatever. And they were the ones that didn't get the good stuff. They didn't get the beautiful husband or wife. They didn't get the jobs. They didn't get the nice house and the cars. That they just got hinky bad luck. So they come to Buddha and the Buddhism in thinking like, well, Jesus let me down. Let's see what Buddha can do. And they bring in that same mindset, that same cult thinking, that the Christianity has. Now, modern Christianity comes in a couple of flavors. The most prominent one is like what you see with the Methodist and Presbyterians, in where they teach that the church and the congregation is God's kingdom on earth. And through obedience to the tenets of their revelationary ministers and preachers and theologians, you shall therefore then become, and you are baptized into their kingdom. You are baptized into their kingdom of God. And they kind of create a micro-society within the mainstream society. And that's sort of a cult. And it's a popular cult, and it's one that is currently in operation in America. The Jehovah's Witnesses, they use revelationary mindsets from their watchtower. And they got the six people that sit at the top of the watchtower are their revelationary ministers and preachers, and whatever revelations they have kind of become what the church is going to do. Doesn't really matter what the Bible teaches. It's because they believe that they are in the kingdom of God, and that the halls and their system is the kingdom of God, and that by staying in guarantees them the seat when they die. That's their whole stick. Mormons are the same way. Then you get into other groups, and they tend to be more, the Baptists are more salvation, more the end is nigh. They're more into the doomsday, that the doomsday clock has been paused, but it can be unpaused at any time. So you have to get yourself prepared and ready for the coming of the second coming. It's the doomsday. So Baptist and Calvinist Calvary, all of these variations then get into that particular bent, which is the doomsday. So when you talk to Westerners who have come to Buddhism or Zen, you really have to find out, are they still stuck in the Jesus cult? Even though they are talking Buddhism, but is it really just cloaked Christianity in where they're treating the Buddha as the Jesus? And it's funny because you can see this. I was reading this blog from a woman who is a ordained and transmitted lineage priest with the San Francisco Zen Center. But you read why she started the whole path was because she didn't like the boyfriend that she had. She felt jilted, that life and Jesus failed her. And so she started going to the Buddhist retreats in hopes that Buddha would fix her life, that Buddha would come in and give her the things she felt that she was lacking. Well, she ended up going into the fast track, into the priesthood, mostly because she found that being a lesbian and ended up marrying one of the lesbian priests there was her golden ticket. And she got what she wanted, which is the power and the sexual control of the group, especially when you are a transmitted priest of the organization. That's being led into that is being led into the elite rooms, the VIP rooms. You know, that's the executive key to the washroom sort of thing, where you know, it's like if you've been in corporations where they kind of point, oh yeah, if you go upstairs, and you go upstairs and it's like a completely different environment. Downstairs is all sterile, soulless cubicles of misery and pain, but you go upstairs to the executive suite and it's all posh couches and very, you know, expensive wood and very, very different atmosphere. And you're like, why is this atmosphere not downstairs? And why do they keep that one oppressed, but this one up here is like really different? And even look at the people. Everybody there is like the executives are in suits and ties and the secretaries are just knockout gorgeous, and you kind of realize, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. That's what happens within the Buddhist cults, is if you're elected by their own internal people to advance, you advance. I don't see any difference between that and the prosperity Bible that the Christians preach, where you advance in the church just like you advance in the corporations. And, you know, people behave this way. It becomes a whole nother Jesus stick. They've just put Jesus in Buddhist robes, but they're playing out the same cult game, which is the end is nigh. You better get busy sitting. You better get busy praying to Buddha. You better get busy doing Zazen. You better get busy doing all these things because you're going to die. And if you don't reach enlightenment and find the golden way and blah, blah, blah before you die, well, then you got to start again, maybe. What's the difference between that and the doomsday cult? That God's kingdom is coming now and you better get busy getting good with God. What's the difference? There is no difference. So this is all how Westerners have interpreted Buddhism, which has become an Asian mirror of Christianity for the most part. And you start to read these books, and you start to read what people are writing, and you see it, and you go, oh, the Roshi here who's writing this crap is really just a disgruntled Christian who's all pissed off at Jesus because they didn't get whatever it is that they thought their life that they should have lived. And now they've come to Buddhism to kind of, well, two ways, I think. And the first way is they're kind of, again, they're going, well, if Jesus let them down, maybe the Buddha will help them. But it's also possible that they're mocking Christianity, which is, I'm going to go over to Buddhism just to fucking mock Jesus, just to mock Christianity. I'm going to say, well, fuck you, Jesus. I'm going to go hang out with Buddha, so fuck you, Jesus. Could also possibly be that because Western Buddhism is such a shallow pool, very small, that these are people that would have been completely irrelevant in the larger Christian churches, but then they find themselves kind of a big fish in a small pond scenario. And I think there's a lot of that too. And so, like I said, when you start to, listen to other Western Buddhists and other people speaking of Christianity, especially these ones that have gone down the, ordained priest and transmitted robes, you got to look at who they are and their backgrounds and what it is that they're still clinging to, or what it is that's still really gnawing at them. And almost 100% of the time, you see that they're still digging at the cult crap that they were brought up in, the Christian cults, the Jesus cults, the doomsday cults, and they still bring over a lot of that Christian theology and thinking right into their Buddhism because they haven't given up Jesus. And it's just like what old Thomas used to poke at us with, which is, why don't you just go back to Christianity? Because you're just going to drag it right over. You're just going to make Buddha the next Jesus. You're just going to drag over all of that crap and put it right on top and not even hear a word the Buddha says. And I've also had I've seen people break down and cry when pressed, when really pressed. First they'll try to run away. And if you don't let them run away, they're going to turn on you violently with punches and swinging arms. But if they get past that, where, they can be restrained, they will actually break down and admit in their hearts that they still love Jesus and that they're very pissed off at Jesus because they wanted a life different than the one they have. And I've seen this. I've seen this with people 8, 10, 15 years living in Buddhist monasteries, even as shaved-headed monks, break down and cry that they're still pissed off at Jesus. Because they haven't gotten over the cult. They haven't gotten over that upbringing. They're mad at their parents, they're mad at everybody, they're mad at the world. And you realize that, these are damaged people. These are very damaged people. They were in a cult. They didn't really go through any deprogramming or anything like that. And they just sat years after years after years trying to have Buddha become the new Jesus, wanting Buddha to save them, wanting Buddha to change their lives to something other than what their life is now. And they didn't hear a word the Buddha said, not a single word. And they always become defensive to anybody that pokes around Jesus around them. You go to a Buddhist and start talking Jesus, oh, watch out. Guaranteed, they will come at you hard. At first, they're going to try to run away from you, but if they can't, they will violently attack you. And this is the thing where you go test this sometime. Go test this. And you find out for yourself, and you're going to go, yeah, Mark's right. These people are stuck on Jesus, even though they're in the Dharma centers, and they got shaved heads, and they got Dharma transmissions, and blah, blah, blah. They're still stuck on Jesus.